Our project has started to come to fruition, a milestone in fact. Lancaster City Council has played an important part in arriving at this point. Thank you to all our partners, volunteers, supporters and neighbours. In particular, Alan Ward, our sculptor and neighbour, and Andrew Kennedy of Lancaster University School of Engineering for your expertise. Tonight we celebrate our first two fruit sculptures in stone, a plum and a pear. It is 25 years since the original tasting garden was created, 10 years since the Friends of the Storey Gardens were formed, and 5 years, Joyce, since your predecessor, the late Roger Mace, reopened these gardens officially to the public. I heartily encourage you all to support our fundraising drive to bring the remaining 19 stone sculptures to this garden. You can even donate tonight. Please join us in the Storey afterwards for a talk by David, our much valued garden advisor, Professor Robert Williams of the University of Cumbria Institute of the Arts and collaborator with the artist Mark Dion, who originally created this wonderful space. I invite you with the Mayor to unveil the sculptures. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane asked me to say a few words about the garden itself. And one of the things that we should bear in mind is that this is the work of Mark Dion, a global A-list artist. It's something that we should be really very cautious about maintaining and keeping. Our mission to restore the garden is a very important one. Imagine what it would be like in a town where in the 1950s a Henry Moore was placed, and people come along and say, what's that? Let's get rid of it. We don't want to keep that anymore. We're not going to keep it going. There would be embarrassment all around 20 or 30 years later, and that's exactly the situation we find ourselves in now with this particular project. Just to fill you in a bit on the history, it was part of Art Trans Pennine 98, an exhibition, the largest of its kind in Europe at the time by geographical area. There was an attempt by curators Lewis Biggs and Robert Hopper of the Henry Moore Institute to kind of break the stranglehold of a London-centric art market and to make sure that the world recognised that important real art, proper art, is going on in the north and in the provinces. We're very lucky that John Angus here was a leading light in making sure that this particular project took place as part of Art Trans Pennine, and we should never ever forget that. From Dion's point of view, it's always been a collective effort. He behaves as an artist rather like a film director, using the skills and talents of huge numbers of other people. In this particular case, it was all the volunteers and the workers and the students that took part in the first iteration of the garden, the building of the site itself, the weeding, getting rid of Japanese knotweed, which was an absolutely fascinating thing to do at the time. But of course it's also about all those people over the past 25 years that have also taken forward the vision of the garden. The Friends of the Storey Gardens, all the people that come along and use the space, and everybody involved in the story as well. So we have to recognise that this is actually a collective effort, even though the intellectual property of it being an artwork by a recognised artist is also paramount in the story of the thing. We're standing on a little paths here. These are laid out according to a scientific model known as the phylogenetic tree. It was originally thought up by Charles Darwin in the notebooks that have just been returned to Cambridge University. There's one page where there's a little kind of spidery drawing of the branches of a tree, beneath which are the words "I think," and that's why Mark Dion used this metaphor, this scientific metaphor, for the tasting garden. It was, in its first iteration, part of a critique of global agribusiness, of the way that supermarkets particularly are basically doing a kind of human-mediated evolution to filter out other types of fruits based on shelf life, based on ease of transport, based on colour, rather than a proper natural evolutionary cycle. So where I'm going with that is that in this world of environmental emergency, climate change, 25 years ago, this garden began that discourse, began that discussion about what these things might mean for us and the planet. So that's why it's a very important work, not only for the people of Lancaster, but also in the overall discussion and discourse about what's going on in our world today. That was my bit of context there, thank you very much. I'll just take this thing off. I've been given instructions by Alan Ward, the only stone worker in the UK that I would ever have trusted with this particular project. Can we just have a quick ripple for Alan Ward? Okay. So this is all his fault. Ta-da! Okay. Lady Mayoress, I think you need to do the next one.
Okay.
Joyce becomes near the end of your year of office.
Yes, good to know.
Next month. We officially call her the Right Worshipful, the Mayor of Lancaster. She's not the Mayoress, she's even more important than that. But you always insist officially that it's Madam Mayor, of course.
Madam Mayor, yes.
So we invite you to do the part 2.
Thank you very much. I will not follow that speech at all because I wouldn't even remember all that. But how fascinating that, 20 years ago, did you say? 25 years ago, this all started then. I have been in this garden a few times, but not too many times. But when you only come to a place like this when it's a nice day, don't you? And whenever I have been in, there's always been people sat on a bench reading a book or doing some writing, and it's just a lovely, relaxing, green space. So yeah, I think that is the really important thing about this. The blossom at the moment looks absolutely beautiful as well. I haven't been here when there's been fruit on the trees. I shall have to come in the autumn and have a look. But this is just a haven to come and sit and be nice and quiet, and it's so good for people's mental health to get out in the fresh air and sit in a place like this. So it is a beautiful space, and I'm going to have a look into here. We'll see. The other one was beautiful. I'm sure this one is equally as beautiful. Oh, fabulous. Let's hope they last longer than the others did. That is lovely.